What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. This is the 6th straight season I'll be making this video, and it's one of, if not the, just most important videos I make every single year. Because let's face it, you can miss in the middle rounds, draft some busts late, and still win the championship. But if you miss early, that really hurts. So in this video, I'll be going over how we can avoid some misses in the early rounds, along with some examples of players that I would recommend targeting. If you agree with my takes, then why not leave a like on the video? Helps me out, makes me feel good. And if you disagree with any of my takes, or you have any other players that you think are great early round selections, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm working on a video where I feature your favorite picks. So if you have someone that you love taking, let me know in the comment section and upvote the comments that you agree with. So let's start things off as usual with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was last season Patrick Mahomes ranked first in third down aggressiveness percentage. Which quarterback ranked second behind him? I was surprised by this. The answer is actually Derek Carr, who I looked into things, was actually a lot better at the deep ball than we have been giving him credit for. As of recording this, you guys have guessed basically every single starting quarterback that is not Derek Carr, but I'm sure someone will get it, and if someone does, I will post it on the screen now. But today's stat, last season, how many quarterbacks had over 400 pass attempts and over 100 rushing attempts? All right, let's talk about the early rounds. Now, when I say early rounds in this video, I mean the first 4 rounds. You could argue the 5th round is still early, but as we'll go over, my strategy changes when you enter the 5th round. So we're talking about first 4 rounds here, but these are just so important, right? Because they form the backbone of your roster. They set up what positions you're going to take later and what you're going to have to focus on in the middle rounds. And they're also the players that you're going to have to rely on for the first few months. Because think about it. You know, the 7th and 8th round running backs this year are like Trey Sermon, James Robinson, Michael Carter, Fournette. And I'm not saying that they won't be good. I'm not saying that we won't be able to use them at some point. But you're not drafting them with the expectation of starting them in week 1 or week 2. In general, we're expecting our first 4 picks to be weekly starters for us, and your team will absolutely be weaker if they bust. But it's not only that you have a weaker team. Our goal is to win the championship, not to just like squeak into the playoffs and get stomped, and not to build, the 3rd or 4th best team and lose in round 2, even lose in the championship. We want to win. And the easiest way to set ourselves up for that is to hit on the first 4 picks. Those players very clearly have the most upside and have by far the best odds of finishing top 3. Because you can pick a successful player in the 5th or the 6th round, but if you pick a successful player in the first 2 rounds, it probably means they're dominating at their position. So how do we do this? How do we draft a team that doesn't have a single bust on it? Unfortunately, the answer is you can't do that. No matter what you do, every player could get hurt. Every player could have their quarterback get hurt. Everyone could have an unlucky season with touchdowns or run into worse game scripts than we're expecting. What you can do, however, is give yourself the best chance for success. To do this, we need to reduce risk as much as possible in the early rounds. If you've followed my content for the last few years, then you've seen the success rate graphic a number of times. This year, I've tried to make it even easier to look at. What you see here are success rates by round, or at least groups of rounds. For our purposes, a success is a start-worthy option. So any player you could realistically start in a normal 12-team league. For quarterback and tight end, that's anyone in the top 12. For running back and wide receiver, it's the top 30, just because I'm assuming you start 2 of each, and then we have a flex spot. So the top 24 will be running backs and wide receivers 1s and 2s, and then the next 6 of each would be used as a flex option. This graphic shows the rough percentage chance you have of drafting a start-worthy option given you are selecting in each of these ranges. Why did I do ranges? Well, number 1, small samples. Okay, there are only a few running backs and wide receivers that go in each round every year, so grouping them gives us more stable numbers. But also, not every draft is the same, right? Some leagues this season, Calvin Ridley is going to go in the first round, whereas others he's going to go in the second round. Maybe there's a few leagues out there where he goes in the third round. So putting, every player into like a group just kind of smooths that out a bit. But also, these groups acted the same. So it might feel strange to look at this and say, okay, you group together the 8th and the 12th round and you have the exact same odds of hitting. Yeah, that is how it worked out. As soon as you enter the 8th round, you're in the later rounds and you have basically the same chance of hitting as you do with a 12th round pick. Because that's the thing. We fall in love with players every year and we just get really overconfident about their roles. Sometimes that skyrockets players from the 12th and 13th round up into the 7th or the 8th round. But at the end of the day, wrong about a lot, right? And so if you look back at your previous mock drafts, even your previous actual drafts, you're going to see a lot of misses, especially starting in the 8th round. That is what I consider the later rounds. There are other takeaways here. The first we'll go over is the difference between running back and wide receiver. For most ranges here, success rates are the exact same. They see the same drop from round 4 into round 5, and then again from round 7 into round 8 before stabilizing at about 20% each for the rest of the draft. And they're both around 75% success rate in the first 2 rounds. It's the 3rd and the 4th rounds that differ. Running back success rates take a big hit from round 2 into round 3, whereas wide receivers do not. Your odds of hitting on a 1st or 2nd round wide receiver is basically the same as a 3rd or a 4th round wide receiver, but that is not the case for running back. So what can we do with this? Well, we draft how we've talked about these last few seasons. Secure a running back early since it's not only their highest success rate, but it's also the running backs with the highest ceiling if they do hit. Then maybe shift your focus to wide receiver after that because the success rates remain the exact same and they still have incredibly high ceilings. There isn't that same drop off there is for running backs. Another takeaway here is round 5. I'm sure you've heard me talk about the infamous round 5 cliff, but it's real. Success rates drop big time for both running backs and wide receivers. So if you think your guy is a lock in this range, you're probably being overconfident. Now, we'll go over what that means for middle round strategy in a future video, but knowing that there's a drop off into the 5th round will shape our mindset in the first 4. We need to be razor focused and 100% confident that the only way our first 4 picks will bust is with an injury. You need to seriously consider the risk of each player and determine if they're worth it. Are they coming off an ACL or an Achilles injury? Are they currently hurt? When you're drafting, that comes into effect more in like late August, during the preseason. But even if it's the case right now, if you have a guy that they're like, we're just monitoring the hamstring, well, monitor the hamstring, right? You got to make sure that this isn't a major issue. Is there any added target competition, whether that's through the draft, whether that's through free agency? Is their offense likely to regress? Are they themselves likely to regress? Did they change teams in the offseason? These are questions that you're going to need to be asking yourself when you're on the clock in the first 4 rounds, because if you miss on 2 of your first 4 picks, chance of hitting on start-worthy talent begins to plummet. And that's not even considering the rest of your league. If you end up drafting one of the 2 busts in the 2nd round, it means that they didn't, So not only are you at a disadvantage, but your league mates are flying high because all of their picks went off, which puts you even further behind. Now, if you're concerned about all of this, maybe you don't know everyone's exact injury history, or you don't want to keep track of it, you don't want to keep track of pending regression or situation changes, fear not, I have a model that gives you a risk score for every single player, and it's specific to that position. So a factor that is important for running backs might not be important for tight ends and vice versa. A great example of that is with rookies. Rookie running backs, they don't see as much of a risk boost for being their first season, But rookie tight ends absolutely do. So I have each player's risk score attached to their tiered rankings on the website, along with each player's projection, their value grade, tags for targets and avoid, tags for my core picks, along with individual breakdowns for every single player and some strategy specific videos that will be released in the coming month. So if you want to see all that for a price that is well below the industry standard, you can check that out at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. One more thing I want to mention about success rates before we go over some individual players. I only showed you running backs and wide receivers. Obviously, there are two more core positions. So what about them? A few things here. One, success rates aren't amazing to look at for these two. Like how many tight ends have really been taken in the first round these last 10 years, right? It's like Gronk, Kelsey, some years that there are actually none that get taken in the first round. Potentially you're in a draft this season, no tight end will be taken in the first round if Kelsey slips into the second. And with quarterbacks, it's even fewer. I mean, no quarterback's going to get taken in the first round this season. And so since there are such small samples, I'd rather just go with a general theme. Quarterbacks and tight ends follow success rates very, very similarly, just like with running backs and wide receivers, although there's really no difference. So the difference with running backs and wide receivers, we went over, is that third and the fourth round range, right? Wide receivers are more successful picks in the third and the fourth round than running backs. With quarterbacks and tight ends, whatever the success rates are, they're exactly the same for basically every single round. And really what it is if you're taking one in the first 4 rounds, you're going to hit. I mean, it is very, very likely if you draft a quarterback or a tight end in the first 4 picks, or that's your first 4 picks, first 4 rounds, you're probably going to hit on a player. And then starting the 5th round, it's about 50 to 60% for the rest of the draft. So when we're thinking about my general strategy that I've gone with in every single mock draft this season, you kind of start to see why I draft the way I do. I mean, I want one of Kelsey, Kittle, Waller at tight end because they're probably going to hit. And if I don't get them, just wait. And if none become available as a value before the end of the draft, just take whoever you want late because your success rate is basically going to be the same whether you're taking one in the 7th round, the 9th round, or the 13th round. Basically the same success rate. At quarterback, it's very similar. Like I really want one of the studs, and if you want to take one of these awesome quarterbacks early, go for it because they're probably going to hit and they have incredibly high ceilings. But my rule this season is Mahomes in the 4th, everyone else in the 5th. We just went over how incredibly important these first 4 rounds are for running backs and wide receivers. They're your best chance of hitting. They're the best ceiling picks if they do hit. So wasting a pick on quarterback in the 3rd or the 4th round probably is not a great idea, even if we're pretty sure they're going to hit. Wide receiver success rates, running back success rates, they fall off a cliff into the 5th round. So why not spend your 5th or your 6th rounder on your quarterback? Because let's be honest, the guys going in that range are like Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, Dak, Lamar. They're going to hit, right? Like the names I just mentioned are going to be good in fantasy, assuming they don't get injured. And so they're quality picks in the 5th and the 6th round. I just wouldn't be targeting them in the first 4 because of how important those are for running back and wide receiver. So that's a summary of my general draft strategy this season. How can we apply it to some players? So we're going to take a look at the first 4 rounds and see who my model says is the safest and the riskiest in each of those rounds and maybe a little bit of why that's the case. This does not mean, this is very important, this does not mean you just can't draft the riskiest player, right? Because sometimes with risk comes reward. And so if you think you're going safe for most of the draft and you do target a risky player in the 3rd round, that doesn't mean you're going to lose, right? They're risky, but if they hit, they might really pay off. So that's very important to remember. I talk about risk in these first 4 rounds. That doesn't mean if a player shows up as risky, you just can't possibly draft them. It just means maybe don't draft the riskiest player in every single round because you're playing with fire there. Someone's probably going to bust. But if you play it safe for the first 2 or 3 rounds and you want to take a chance, you can absolutely still target someone who's risky. Also, I'm only giving you 2 players in each round, and it's entirely possible that none of these players are available when you're on the clock. So if you want to know every single player that I would target and avoid, along with their exact risk rating, their rankings, their projections, and an individual breakdown on them, head on over to thefantasyfootballadvice.com and sign up for access to all of that over there. It comes with more information than most sites in the industry for a fraction of the cost and is cheaper than it should be, honestly. So if you care about winning your league, I really have no idea why you would not get our draft package, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. But with that being said, let's start with the first round. My model has Ezekiel Elliott as the safest running back pick, with Saquon Barkley as the 24th safest, riskiest in the first round. And I know that is going to cause a little bit of a reaction, but think about Zeke for a second. My model looks at a bunch of things, but the most important, how good is the offense? How secure is the running back's role? How productive have they been in their career? How old are they? And are they coming off a major injury? Zeke is on a top 5 offense. His role is secure. He has been highly productive in his career. He's only 25, and he's coming off no major injury. Last season was the worst of his career, and it could be bad again if Dak suffers another season-ending injury. But those are things you just can't predict, and you'll go mad if you try to. The return of Dak will make this offense elite again, and that makes Zeke a slam dunk pick, just like he was last season. You're just getting him at a better discount now. Transition over to Barkley. Well, he's not on as good of an offense. He does have a secure role, although it remains to be seen if it's going to be limited to start the season. His risk rating is absolutely going to change depending on news. So if we do get news that says, nope, he's 100%, he's getting a full snap share in week 1, his risk is going to go down, right? It's just going to. But right now, there is risk that he's not 100% to start the season. And if he's not 100%, that's a very risky pick, 3rd overall where he's going right now. I went over him last week, though, so I don't want to go too in-depth here. You can watch that video. But in short, my general take on him is just why? Why take the risk this early in the draft? There are so many elite, just awesome players on the board. When he goes off the board, 3rd overall, why are you taking the 24th safest running back? There are incredible options still on the board. Why take a risk with Saquon? In the second round, the safest pick is Calvin Ridley, although it's entirely possible that he sees his risk go up. If he's not 100%, I will monitor the news at a training camp this summer, but everything we've seen so far is no, he's going to be totally fine. He'll be good to go in camp, but if that does change, his risk will go up. But assuming he's good to go, if this is a high-end offense, solid quarterback play, I'm not going to call it elite quarterback play, Dak is elite quarterback play. Matt Ryan at this point in his career is not elite quarterback. He's got a secure target share. He's the only wide receiver that's elite. He's the only great wide receiver on that offense. Russell Gage is fine, but he's not elite. He's in his prime. He's an awesome pick. Even giving him a ding for injuries barely moves his risk. And actually, he made the video last season as the safest pick in the 4th round. Now he's the safest pick in the 2nd round. Could he be a first rounder next season? Remains to be seen. It's entirely possible. For the riskiest 2nd round pick, Aaron Jones just beats out A.J. Brown. Jones, of course, has the risk that Aaron Rodgers doesn't play for his team this season. That would tank everything. The offense would be trash. Quarterback play would be trash. He'd see less volume, fewer touchdowns. Obviously, that's a big risk. Once Rodgers is confirmed back, though, I would expect A.J. Brown to be the riskiest pick in the 2nd round. He, of course, has Julio joining the team, and there's some unknowns there, right? And this was already one of the lowest volume passing offenses in the league. Could they increase their pass attempts per game? Sure, but they love running the ball with Derrick Henry, and Julio Jones is a fantastic wide receiver, is going to command a large target share, so he is a little bit risky at his current ADP. For the 3rd round, the safest pick is Amari Cooper, although I'll say this, CeeDee Lamb is just behind him only because of career production. So the model feels more confident in Amari Cooper because he's been more productive over his career. Obviously, Lamb only has 1 season, and so he can't match Amari Cooper. But I would honestly guess that next season, CeeDee Lamb is the single safest wide receiver pick that you can make. He is an absolute stud. and I think his production this season will give the model more confidence next year. The riskiest pick in the third round is DeAndre Swift, simply because we have no idea how this offense is going to look. Sure, there are reports that he'll be used a ton in the receiving game, but they do still have to move the ball, and that's something that they're probably not going to be very good at. That's what makes him risky. We just don't know how this offense is going to look, but we're pretty sure it's going to be bad. Finally, we have the fourth round where Mike Evans is the safest pick and Mike Davis is the riskiest. Evans is still in his prime. He returns to the exact same situation and has been a model of health throughout his career. Davis, on the other hand, is already 28. He's never been over 650 rushing yards, is on one of the worst or the worst rushing offenses in football, and is changing teams. I mean, a fourth round pick does not get much riskier than that. So that'll do it for this extremely long but very important video. Remember to leave a like if you watch this far, and also remember that our draft package is available. It offers more information than most sites in the industry for a fraction of the cost. But that, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.